his body, I can construct a new Gallifrey.
My battle is in there, saving my daughter.
I swear, I won't stop you.
Welcome back to the Nerdy Grail. Now, it's been quite a while actually since I've done a concerns or discussion video. I did do a concerns video way back, probably about 3 months ago, before season 2 came out. So it'll be good within hindsight to go back and check that video. And if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. But I did do a concerns and discussion video of what I was a bit worried about when it came to this current season. And I thought now, because in literally about 4 days time, we are going to get the finale, episode 8, The Reality War. I must admit, after watching Wishworld a couple more times, I know in my review I gave it an 8.5, but on rewatch and the longer I've had to think about it, there is a lot more to it that I'm concerned about in regards to the reality war, and some things that I am really worried about, because Russell T Davies does have a bit of a track record in terms of doing really well in a part 1, but then tends to fall short in a part 2, can't seem to stick the landing, and that was the case with last year's Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. The build-up to Sutekh was great, but then everything that happened in Empire of Death was extremely underwhelming, and actually did a bit of a disservice to Sutekh, who is one of the biggest and best villains in the classic era, hence why I'm still rocking out my 4th Doctor t-shirt for this video. But yeah, so in today's video, I want to go over a few of my concerns that I have for the reality war. And I'm hoping that these concerns won't come true, but I can't deny, and especially after watching a couple of other videos on YouTube, they are starting to become a bit of a reality to me, these concerns. And so I wanted to put my own thoughts out there, what I think might happen in reality war, and why that might be a concern to me for the future of the show, and how it might actually impact the finale actually being another lackluster finale. So I think the best place to start is we will break down what the actual plot or synopsis of the reality war is, and take a little look at some of the cast that has currently been revealed for the reality war, and I can explain to you why my concerns start even from there. Okay, so to begin with, like I said, I wanted to go over the brief synopsis for Doctor Who, The Reality War, and talk about some of the cast list and why my concerns start here, to be perfectly honest. So we're on the BBC website here, where we've got Doctor Who, The Reality War, which is due to broadcast on Saturday at 18:50, so at 10 to 7, but obviously this one does have a cinema release, and also will go on BBC iPlayer as well, and Disney Plus if you're outside of the UK. So let's see what it says. So The Reality War, episode 8 of 8. So this is a 1 hour and 6 minute episode, so we've got an extended episode, which, you know, is a good thing considering how much we've got in this episode. But that also does have a concern as to why they've extended it, what have they changed, what have they added, and even whether that length is actually going to be long enough, considering how much is in this episode. But the synopsis is: battle rages across the skies as the unholy trinity unleash their deadly ambition. The Doctor, Belinda and Ruby have to risk everything in the quest to save one innocent life. So straight away, the one innocent life, I'm trying to think about like who that could be. There's multiple different candidates as to who that innocent life could be. Are you talking about Belinda? Are you talking about Poppy? Are you talking about Ruby? Are you talking about Conrad, who's actually, if you watch Wishworld, you know, he could get easily betrayed by the Ranis, you know, and he could be being abused. You've also got the child who turns out to be this god of wishes. Are we talking about that that's the innocent child? Are we talking about the return of Susan? Who are we talking about in terms of this innocent life? So many plot threads coming into my head already. But yeah, so that's already a bit of a concern. But if we scroll down and we have a look at who's actually in this episode. So, some of the credits, obviously, we've got Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. We've got Belinda Chandra, played by Varada Sefu. We've got Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson, which I'm hoping that Millie will have a lot more to do in this next episode, because she was a bit underused in Wishworld. And I would like to actually see Ruby and the Doctor, you know, meet properly again. Obviously, we've got the Rani, who I thought the new version of the Rani was brilliant, played by Archie Panjabi, who she did a fantastic job, in fairness to her. Got Mrs. Flood, played by Anita Dobson. Now, I'm really hoping and praying that Mrs. Flood does actually start to portray her successor or start to take a bit more charge, because she still feels a bit like an underling. Like, obviously, if you watch Wishworld, there's a scene where the Rani commands Mrs. Flood to make Conrad a sandwich, and it's like, come on now. Speaking of Conrad, we've got Conrad Clark, played by Jonah King. I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more of him. We've got Winnie Peveridge, played by Sam Lawton. We've got Shirley Bingham, played by Ruth Madeley, who, you know, I'm hoping that, again, we'll see a bit more of her, because we didn't really see an awful lot of her. But because, from what I've seen in the teaser trailers and stuff, we're probably going to be going back to Modern Day Unit. We'll get to see her in that scientific advisor role yet again. We've got Carla Sunday, played by Michelle Greenidge. So it's nice that we're seeing the Sunday family again. Obviously, we've got Poppy, the space baby. And I still wonder what her link to all this is, to be perfectly honest. Especially after the Doctor said when he was falling into the underverse or the underworld, so to speak, that, you know, that Poppy is actually real and he has a daughter. So I wonder what that's all about. Obviously, we've got the return of Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, played by Gemma Redgrave, which she didn't do an awful lot in the last episode, so hopefully we'll get to see Kate, you know, more in action this time round, especially after Lucky Day, where we got to see a darker side to Kate, which I really enjoyed. Susan Triad, so Susan Twist, and again, hope we see a lot more of her. But I do have concerns that she's just going to be a bit of background dressing, you know, just there for, oh look, it's Susan Twist again. Obviously, we've got Colonel Ibrahim again, which I love Colonel Ibrahim. You know, he's like the Sergeant Benton of modern Who now, pretty much. If Kate is the Brigadier, then Colonel Ibrahim is the Sergeant Benton, which is really nice. Nice to see we've got the Vlinks coming back again. I want to know what the deal with the Vlinks is, because my fiancée seems to have this thing where she thinks that we're going to have like a Mr. Smith from Sarah Jane Adventures sort of plotline, which I could see it, you know, this alien technology that is helping the core team, but then eventually turns on the core team briefly. So maybe, who knows, but the Vlinks is back. This is the interesting one. Rose Noble, played by Yasmin Finney. So we've got Rose coming back again from the 60th specials and from last year's finale. Firstly, the question is, are we going to see the return of any other Noble family? Sylvia? Are we going to see Donna? 14. I mean, I highly doubt any of that, you know, so ignore that really. It's probably just going to be Rose. But I hope she actually does something, because she didn't do anything when she came back in last year's finale. So that's what I mean by just shoving characters in for character's sake, and that's a concern of mine. Melanie Bush, obviously, played by Bonnie Langford. You know, Mel didn't do an awful lot in the last episode, so again, I hope she does. And this was something I said in my Rani discussion video, is that Mel and the Rani faced each other in Time and the Rani. I want an interaction between Mel and the Rani. You know, I was disappointed that Sasha didn't have much of an interaction with Tegan and Ace. The Master having an interaction with Tegan and Ace in The Power of the Doctor had like one line between the two of them. I thought that was wasted. There's so much history there. So I'm hoping, again, we get that. We got Cherry Sunday again. We got Lakshmi Chandra. So it's nice to see some of Belinda's family. And then we've just got, obviously, the writer, Russell T Davies, executive producer, Russell T Davies, executive producer, Julie Gardner, you know, and so on and so forth. So we got all the rest. But as you can see, just from this cast here, we have got an awful lot. You've got the Doctor. You've got 2 core companions. 3 if you want to count Mel. You've got 2 versions of the Rani. You've got Conrad. You've got Kate. You've got Susan Triad. You've got the Vlinks. You've got Rose. That is a massive amount, and that's not even adding in other characters, which obviously you've seen the thumbnail and you know what happens at the end of Wishworld. We've also got the potential return of Omega. We've also got potentially the return of Rogue. We've also got the potential return of Susan Foreman, not Susan Triad. There's just so much, and so that's my first concern of the reality war, is that we might end up, unfortunately, having characters that are just there for the sake of it and are not given enough screen time to develop, and that is a massive concern. And it's not the first time that Russell has done that. So I would be really disappointed if, say, Mel never encountered the Rani properly and had a proper interaction. If the Doctor and Ruby didn't have a final interaction. You know, if Mrs. Flood's version of the Rani doesn't start sticking up for herself a bit more and we get a bit like what happens at the end of The Doctor Falls where Missy and the Master fall out. You know, I want to see more of these things happen, you know? So that is my first concern, is that I worry that there's not enough time, because for 1 hour and 6 minutes, that sounds like a lot, but when you consider what's in this episode and all the things it's got to deal with, that's actually not a very long time. And so my concern is that we're not going to fit it all in properly. So yeah, so that is my first concern. However, there is an awful lot more concerns that I have, and I'm going to get into that right now. Okay, so I said one of my major concerns is that I don't think characters are going to be developed very well, and I sort of got this feeling that characters are going to get left in the dust, because you saw that cast list, how many big names are in there, and I mentioned a lot more that weren't even revealed on there, but will probably appear in the finale in one capacity or another. But my second major concern is due to one of the returning core villains. Obviously, in the Interstellar Song Contest, we had the grand reveal that the Rani was back. And also then she bi-regenerated, so then we had 2 Ranis. Which, you know, fantastic to see the Rani back. We've been asking for it for a long time. And because she came at the end of episode 6, it means we got 2 episodes to flesh her out a bit. So they sort of did it in a bit of like season 3, where the Master appears at the end of Utopia, and then you have the 2-parter to flesh out the Master with John Sim. So he is obviously retreading old grounds there, which is another one of my concerns, but I'll get onto that later. But my other major concern is the second major villain that was revealed at the end, or well, I say revealed, teased is a better word to use, at the end of Wishworld, and that is, if I show you my box set, I've got 2 box sets here. So we've got the season 10 box set from the collection range, which is signed by Katie Manning, which I really, really love. But also we have got the season 20 collection box set from the Peter Davison era, both having a character in it that is now finally come back to Doctor Who. And that is the return of Omega. Yes, the return of Omega. After like 40 years, we finally got the return of good old Omega, which, you know, is another character that we really, really wanted to have, and it's great to have. But the problem that Wishworld had, unlike Legend of Ruby Sunday, where we actually got to hear the voice of Sutekh, played by Gabriel Wolf, and got to visually see Sutekh, so we knew he was there, this time we didn't actually get that. We did get the voice of Omega, but that was like reused sound bites from previous stories and previous media. That actually wasn't a new line of dialogue from a new person, and we never visually saw Omega, and that is the concern, because the whole plot of Reality War from the teasers seems to be building up to Omega being released, and so my concern is that he's teased Omega, but we might either not see Omega at all, or we will literally see Omega for like a minute or 2. Or maybe he'll just be a disembodied voice. And that for me would be extremely disappointing. And I think that would really annoy a lot of people, because Omega is a character that people have been dying for ages. So that is another concern of mine, and it wouldn't be beyond Russell to do something like that, which is another major concern of mine. And I worry that he might go down that route because he's realised that he's got so much to fit in, and that he wouldn't be able to flesh him out enough. You've only got an hour, remember, and he's got so many other characters to still pad out and other plot lines to wrap up. So for me, I have a concern that Omega will be severely underused, if he's even used at all. I mean, you know, I'm hoping and praying that obviously as the Doctor falls down into this underverse, or whatever they're calling it, he'll meet Omega from the get-go. I'm really hoping. My prediction is that he'll either meet Omega straight away, or he'll bump into Rogue. Because obviously Rogue appeared on a TV screen and let the Doctor know about the tables and how the cups fall through the tables, you know, to get the doubt spinning in his mind more. So he might meet Rogue, and he did say in season 1 that he would come find him again. So I'm hoping that will be the case. But also another concern of mine is linking to Susan. He's been teasing Susan all through season 1, you know, obviously in like Devil's Cord. Obviously we had the whole Susan twist, Susan triad thing where he thought she might be Susan. Sutek using the image and thoughts of Susan to help lure the Doctor in, you know, and then obviously in season 2 we had the reveal and tease of Susan in Interstellar Song Contest, and then she appeared briefly on a TV screen in Wish World, a bit like Rose did in Midnight. So there's the possibility that Susan could also return. If she does, you know, is it still going to be Carol Ann Ford? I'd imagine so, since she came back to film those little cameos. I'd imagine it would be Carol Ann Ford. But my concern is, will she be done justice? Will she get a true interaction with the Doctor? Will she regenerate? You know, will we get a new Susan? Because obviously Carol Ann Ford, bless her soul, you know, she's getting older now, and will she be able to still continue to do this? You know, she is the last surviving member of the original TARDIS trio of Ian, Barbara and Susan. So after the sad passing of William Russell not too long ago. But it would be nice to see Susan, but I just have a concern that she also will either not appear, he'll still be teasing her, hopefully to come back in the future, which would also annoy fans again, or she'll come, but she won't be done justice. So there's more concerns there. So Susan and Omega are also a concern. If you haven't guessed already, this section of the video is me discussing the concerns about characters. I should have mentioned that at the start. But another major concern for a character I have is Mel. Mel, because obviously, like I said in my Mrs. Flood is the Rani video, Mel and the Rani have an interesting relationship. Mel has been in 2 stories that the Rani has been in. And when I say 2 stories, it's because I'm also including the fact that Mel was also one of the bodies that got swapped around in the 1993 Dimensions in Time EastEnders Doctor Who crossover for the 30th anniversary of the show, which also had Kate O'Mara as the core villain of the Rani, who trapped the Doctor in that time loop. But also in, obviously, Time and the Rani with the 7th Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. So Mel and the Rani have history, and at the moment, that's not shown on screen. In fact, there's not a single scene where Mel and the Rani are on screen together. The closest is when Mel's watching Belinda and the Doctor get arrested by the Mrs. Flood incarnation, but doesn't actually do anything. So I want to see Mel and the Rani have a bit of banter, you know, I mean, obviously Rani's not going to disguise herself as Mel, like I slightly mentioned in my Rani, Mrs. Flood is the Rani video. But, you know, it would be nice to have little subtle nods. Because I said this to my fiance at the time, when the Doctor finally gets his memories back at the end of Wish World, and he says, you know, I am the Doctor, and the Rani is, and then he turns and the Rani's gone. I tried to link that to Time and the Rani, where obviously Sylvester McCoy wakes up from his post-regeneration sickness, and he's still wearing Colin's outfit, and he says, like, where am I, who am I, and who are you, and turns and then says the Rani. I like to think that was a subtle little callback. And probably completely wrong, but it just felt similar to me. But yeah, so I have a concern that the Mel and the Rani will not get proper interactions with each other, and that might just be due to timing. But then the final character that I want to sort of discuss is bringing in random characters from the past just for the sake of it, such as Rose Noble and Rogue. You know, but in particular, Rose Noble, played by Yasmin Finney again. Because, you know, Yasmin Finney now has been in, 4 stories of Doctor Who? She was in, obviously, The Star Beast, The Giggle, and then was in Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. But she's not actually done an awful lot. The most she did was, obviously, in The Star Beast, where she was responsible for finding the Meep. But when she came back in Empire of Death and Legend of Ruby Sunday, she had very little dialogue and impacted the plot. It didn't impact the plot at all. So I just worry that she's there just to be like, oh look, it's Rose again, a bit like Susan Twist. And Rogue, I feel like if Rogue isn't used properly, then again, he's going to be a bit of a wasted character. So that is another one of my big concerns. A waste of potential and a waste of big name characters just to be like, look, I included those. Now you can shut up, everyone. That's my concern that I have with Russell at the moment. But there is also one more major concern that I have for the reality war, and I'm going to get onto that in the final section of this video. And so my final major concern that I have for the reality war is also a concern I have for the future of the show. And that is the fact that I think personally, is that I think Russell is sort of running out of ideas, and that is a major cause for concern. And obviously, is the future of the show in safe hands, both with current showrunner and current main star who's in the role? Because obviously, there's been loads of speculation going around, theories, newspaper articles saying Ncuti Gatwa has been fired or axed, but then they've come out and said, no, this is not true. Is this true? This, that, and the other. Look, personally, do I think Ncuti is leaving at the end of season 2? I would say that it's a possibility because of everything and because of a potential hiatus, apart from obviously like the war between the land and the sea. There has to be a potential pause, and will Ncuti wait for that? I don't know. So I'll say it's a possibility, but do I think it will happen? I'm not sure, and I'm not going to say whether I think he's been fired or not. I don't think Ncuti's been fired, but again, it's not beyond the realms of impossibility because of everything that's happened from the ratings of the show, even though I think it's been fine, but the ratings of the show have not been the best. They've been quite low. Obviously, everything that happened with the Eurovision and Ncuti pulling out of that. You know, all the reviews as well have not been perfect for his episodes. And so it's been another controversial era, a bit like the Jodie Whittaker era with Chris Chibnall. And obviously everything with Bi-Regeneration, and now Bi-Regeneration coming back again and changing things. I just think that, you know, maybe it might be time for a shake-up, and that might be the shake-up that's needed, whether it's Russell stepping down or whether it's Ncuti maybe departing. I don't know. But I've quite liked Ncuti, to be fair, especially this season. I wasn't too sure in season 1, but I've liked him a lot more in season 2. He's grown on me a little bit more. So I would like, obviously, to have, you know, a good interaction now in Reality War with him and the Rani and him and potentially Omega. But yeah, in terms of Russell running out of ideas, this is the case, I think, personally, because he's recycling so much old material. Like I said, the format of both season 1 with Christopher Eccleston and season 1 with Ncuti, which is what I've got here, is we've got, obviously, season 1 with Christopher Eccleston, which started off with a present-day story on Earth, you know, for the Doctor and companion to get established. Then they went to a space station in space and had a futuristic story. Then the third story was The Unquiet Dead, where they went to the past on Earth and met a historical figure or did something of historical value. You know, that sort of theme, building up to a big returning villain at the end of the series of the Daleks, which obviously we have the Sutekh reveal at the end of season 1 with Ncuti. So compare that and what I've just said in season 1 or series 1 to season 1 with Ncuti Gatwa, where the first story, if you take Church on Ruby Road as the first story, it is a present day story where the Doctor gets to know the new companion, followed on then by Space Babies, which is set on a space station in the future. Then you have The Devil's Cord, which is set on Earth in the past, where the Doctor and companion encounters a historical figure, where we talk about the Beatles, as opposed to Charles Dickens in season 1, all culminating at the end to a returning villain, not the Daleks in this case, but Sutekh. Can you see the pattern going on here? There is a pattern that he is recycling. And then you've got season 2, the current season, which is an exact parallel to season 3 back in the David Tennant era with Martha Jones, because the whole plot of that series was about, you know, the Doctor telling Martha that he is the last of the Time Lords, Gallifrey is gone, and he is alone. And then you've got characters like the Face of Bo that say you're not actually alone. And then what happens at the end? We've got a 3-part finale where at the end of the first part, we get the reveal that actually the Doctor's not alone, because in Utopia, the Master gets revealed. And then you have a 2-part finale where the Doctor takes on the Master. What happens then in season 2 is that all through the series, the Doctor has mentioned to Belinda that he is the last of the Time Lords, that Gallifrey is gone, and that he needs that support. And then what happens at the end is, even though it's a 2-part finale, we still got the Utopia Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords format, because at the end of Interstellar Song Contest, it's revealed that the Doctor is not alone because the Rani appears. And now we have a 2-part finale where we have the Doctor versus the Rani. Can you see what's going on here? It seems like he is just recycling old materials because he doesn't have any actual new ideas. And that is a problem and a concern of mine. And that is why I worry about the finale, because in his original era, apart from season 1, where I think Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways are both equally strong, he has a slight dip because part 2 is usually worse than part 1. Like Doomsday, I think, is worse than Army of Ghosts. Like the Daleks versus the Cybermen stuff is great, but then all the lovey-dovey stuff on the beach with Rose takes you right out of it. Then season 3, Utopia and Sound of Drums are brilliant, but then Last of the Time Lords is random and weird. And then Stolen Earth and Journey's End is close to being equal, but again, you get the weird lovey-dovey stuff with Rose on the beach again with 2 doctors, and it gets a bit out of hand. He's not good at sticking the landing, and that is a concern that I've got here again. So yeah, my concern is that he's recycling old ideas, but he's doing it slightly worse this time round, because no matter how bad his original era's second parts were, they were 50 times better than what we've had so far in terms of his finale. Like, I would happily take Journey's End, Last of the Time Lords, Doomsday any day over Empire of Death. And that's why I've got a big concern about Reality War, is it might happen again. So yeah, I do have some major concerns about Reality War and whether it'll actually be a good finale, whether it'll do the show justice, and how's the episode going to end? Are we going to end with the Doctor regenerating? Are we going to end on an open ending where he doesn't regenerate, but he sort of does a bit like what happens in Survival, where the 7th Doctor and Ace walk off giving a big speech before the hiatus, or before we have a large gap without episodes? What's actually going to happen? Is Shooty going to stay? Are we going to have a new Doctor? Are we going to have a Christmas special this year? So many questions. And so I'm really scared and nervous. And I know a lot of people are as well. I know there's even rumours about a reset. I know people have theorised it, a potential whole series reset where, because of the fact that obviously this is a very weird universe, think about it, truly think about it. Since Wild Blue Yonder, we've had Mavity. No one uses the word gravity, it's Mavity. But then on top of Mavity, we've then also got Bi-Generation. Bi-Generation has only happened since we have been in this universe. We've had the Doctor Bi-Generate and we've had the Rani Bi-Generate. So what happened to regeneration? But also on top of that, and this is something I mentioned to my fiance as well, is think about the villains that we've had in this era. We've not had a single returning villain. Now, let me preface this now, because obviously we have. But what I mean by we've not had a returning villain is obviously we don't have the generic ones we normally have. The Daleks, the Cybermen, the Master, the Ice Warriors, Weeping Angels, that sort of thing. Think about the returning villains that we've had and how they have returned. We've had the Toymaker, who came through post Wild Blue Yonder. I know Sutek said that obviously it might have been the Salt that released everything, but the Toymaker came through post Wild Blue Yonder, so he could have easily broken through to this new universe that they're in, because the point is that this is set in an alternative universe. So that's how the Toymaker's here. Then the next returning villain we had was Sutek. Now Sutek was on the TARDIS, so he just follows the Doctor. So that's how Sutek's here. He came through with the Doctor, so that's why he's here. Who was the next returning villain then after Sutek? Well, technically then after Sutek, it was the Midnight Creature. But think about the Midnight Creature in this current era of the show. The Midnight Creature's been acting very differently to how it normally acts. It might be another species or an alternative species of it. So it's very, very different. So it's not the same. And then the next returning villain then after that we've got is the current ones. So the Rani. Well, the Rani, you could easily explain as being part of the problem and part of the one who set up this alternative universe and just came through with the Doctor, following him along. And then you've got Omega, who's actually, not even in this plane of existence, in this reality, so he's safe from it. So think about it. All these villains that have come through, or we've seen so far, are not your normal ones and have not been done in the normal way. So that's probably why we haven't seen a lot of these old villains, is because they're still in the other universe, the normal universe, where people say gravity and there's no bi-generation, it's just regeneration. So that's something else that I've been thinking about and has got quite heavy on my mind. But yeah, so I hope I'm sorry that this has sounded like a bit of a rant and a ramble, but I just wanted to get my points out there and my concerns for Reality War. I'm hoping that I'm proved wrong, and I'm hoping that Reality War is going to be a fantastic episode, but I won't deny, like other people, I do have a lot of concerns. But I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts for Reality War. Are you excited or are you concerned like me? And subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nerdy Grail signing off. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now, everyone.